Good morning, everybody. Yes, we've arrived at an age where car sharing is a little bit more sophisticated and also a bit less nerdy than it used to be back in the days. So I'm going to talk about three major topics. The first is quickly we'll have a look at the key constraints in urban transport, being space and time. Then we'll look at the approach that shared transportation, car sharing, and also other kind of sharing that we talk about these days can do. And then finally, what the issues are about transportation for future cities and how car sharing actually can contribute to making the built environment better. So key constraints in urban transport. The major big issue, of course, is the availability and the use of urban space. It's the efficiency in the use of public space. It was already mentioned, building new infrastructure is extremely expensive, both in terms of asset as in terms of time. So what you want to do first is make a better use of the existing infrastructure. And then, of course, one of the key criteria is the number of slots that you use per passenger that you carry. This is a picture I took in Jakarta, Indonesia. You see that there's 1.1 or 1.2 passengers maybe per an average in the cars. And then you see this bus rapid transit bus loaded with 100 passengers zooming along on its dedicated busway. So while all of this is not new, also the aspect that the cost of time is the other big variable is not new. It was already actually the factor that in the second half of the 19th century led to the industrialization of urban transport and to the building of the elevated railway in New York that in 1890 already carried 405 million passengers a year. That was 15 years before the first subway line in New York was even built. Okay, so what can shared transportation do to make these better? First, let's have a look at vehicle sharing. Most of you are probably aware of the basic concept of car sharing. Instead of one driver, one car, it is several drivers for one car. If we look beyond the systematic, if we look at things actually in real numbers, that means between 15 and 20 cars that can be taken off the road for one shared car. And of course, the goal is to make these shared cars part of the paratransit. Of a paratransit is everything that complements transit, so heavy public transportation like buses, rail, everything that is route fixed. There are two modes, we're probably aware of that. The one is return car sharing, where cars are sitting in pods, where you take them and where you put them back, that are distributed along the street grids. For example, in Zurich, Switzerland, we've got statistically one pod every 200 meters in the city that stands there in the public transport stops. Then the other possibilities is so-called free-floating systems, where you can use any legal parking space within a given perimeter. Basically, the operator in generally will have an agreement with the municipality to pay a flat fee per year for the use of these spaces. Just what we do in Switzerland is a brief example. We are operating a nationwide network, not only in the cities or in one city, but nationwide, serving every location that has more than 10,000 inhabitants. We have 2,750 cars at this time, 1,030 of which are sitting in rail stations and transit hubs. Different vehicle classes from the smart to the delivery van, if you want to move. The pod sizes ranged from 1 to 30 or even 35 vehicles, and 15% of these pods that might be interesting are actually operated as a lots, which cost us 200,000 Swiss francs, that's 165,000 euros a year, but we consider this a tribute to the public service, because somebody who wouldn't find a car at the end of the journey would probably use their private car or a private car in the first place and would not use the train to get there and use the car-sharing car for the last mile. We also have a locally superimposed free-floating system that sits on top of the return cost system in Basel to provide everybody with what they really want. We've got 115,000 customers at this day, 50% of which are roughly members of the cooperative, meaning then we encourage them to be part of the processes, to tell us where we need to open new pods, what's going wrong, what's good, what we could do in the future. So there's an active discourse incorporating the clients. And what's the most important thing, we are fully integrated with transit. Our concept is not to compete with transit, but to leverage transit by providing cars for people who otherwise in their daily routine need transit and use transit, and then occasionally need to use a car, with providing them with a car in the size that they need. We operate, our businesses are the operation of our domestic car sharing in Switzerland, but also consulting work. We sell our software that can do both return and free-floating car sharing and provide consulting for whoever wants a turnkey car sharing systems anywhere out there in the world. And in Switzerland, actually, the savings per customer are estimated to be about around 3,200 euros per year and per customer. A couple of pictures. This is a car-sharing pod sitting next to the rail station. You see the train tracks in the foreground in St. Gallen, which is the capital of eastern Switzerland. Then you see here a pod at Geneva Airport that I've been using this morning when I've been flying here. You see that on the left-hand side, you see a four-wheel drive car that is in the mountains in St. Moritz in the posh resort, also in the rail station, waiting for you to carry your ski gear to the apartment or around. On the right, you see in the Netherlands is a vehicle, is not our vehicle, but it's green wheels. They run an electric vehicle that can be plugged in and out. And here, even the free-floating vehicles can have parking spaces that they can use if we were to leave it at the rail station. In the back, you see a Swiss intercity train making the linkage from Basel to Zurich. So you see that the proximity and having these cars really in the transit hub is one of the most important things. So, talking briefly about the growth rates, you see that this compares Montreal's Communauté in Canada with our system. You see that the dots are the users and the lines are the cars. So you see that there's been a rapid development over the past years. You see that today we have 5 million. It's a Frost & Sullivan study that came out early this summer. You see that we've got 5 million customers globally for car sharing and roughly 100,000 vehicles, growing rapidly. And as I said before, as we have in Switzerland, the integration of all transit modes is an essential requirement for car sharing to be efficient. You have mainland rail, regional railways, rural buses, mountain buses, boats on the lakes, cable transport, urban transport. In Switzerland, it's all integrated in one ticketing process, and so is the car sharing. And so will it be also electronically in the future. That's what we're working on currently. To be complete, and to just mention it in terms of vehicle sharing, of course, there are also bike sharing systems. This is one in Beijing, China, which is the largest market to date. Sometimes there's actually a confusion in terminology. Sometimes car sharing is being used, the term car sharing, for everything that involves cars that are not your own. Actually, this is not true. Car sharing is what I just mentioned. There's also ride sharing, which is very important. Just to mention this, the concept here is to fill up empty seats in cars traveling anyway, so to use capacity sitting idle. It had a huge economic impact since ever. It made its first large-scale appearances, one of them being the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955. There was this woman on the right, Rosa Parks, who eventually in the southern United States refused one day to get up and to give her seat up to a white patron who was boarding the bus. Of course, she was arrested and there was a big mess. And then for weeks and months, the black and the colored people walked the streets or rode private cars instead of using the bus system, and that was eventually what sparked off the end of the racial segregation on public transport in the southern United States. This is a very nice picture. You see the private car being loaded with people and the transit bus empty, which was a totally uncommon sight at that time in the background. So actually the person who was masterminding this in the background was a young reverend called Martin Luther King. Today it's less about protest than about incentives. For example, if you have more than one person in a car, you can use in the US and in Australia and Israel, you can use so-called HOV lanes, which will get you to your destination much faster. So, transportation for future cities. What are the issues? Of course, we know the past. We know the decline of rail transit, the Great American Streetcar Scandal. We know about the post-World War II developments, urban sprawl, one of the most unsustainable things that have ever happened. What is this? Look at this mess. Transit, how do you want to address this? I don't know what the guys who were planning this were thinking about suburbia. One thing I do know is they didn't really think about transportation or making that efficient. So if you want to kind of get people around there and you want to not everybody have their own car, you need some commuter shuttles or you need some smart shared vehicle systems to address that. Or you would have to bulldoze it, which means bulldozing large parts of the northern and southern United States. Then there's the rise of the mall with the segregation of the unbundling of daily life. There's free parking, which with its disastrous effects, Donald Shoup, one of the leading researchers, calls it a fertilizer drug for cars. We heard it this morning. Actually, even today, 99% of all automobile trips in the United States end or start in free parking spaces. That shows about. And then finally, there's the social stigma that the transit bus has in large parts of the world outside Europe. It's considered transportation for the poor and the underprivileged, and is shunned by the middle classes. So all this is going to be addressed and is still going to be mingled up somehow. What can car sharing contribute to that? We've got a further aggravation of capacity issues. But not only on the road, but also on the rail infrastructure. This is a picture I took at 10:30 at night on a weekday in Shanghai, people queuing up 2.5 minutes to get a space on the escalator to get out of the subway. We heard it before, data is the new oil. That's Andreas Weigand, the social data revolution forethinker from Silicon Valley, who said this. We need to rethink the political economy of urban territories. We need to get the age of the mall is over, and smart retail concepts are taking over. Convenience stores in rail stations, cargo delivery bikes, which also will be shared. By the way, this is also a free-floating car-sharing vehicle in the back. We have things like, if you look in Asia for IKEA stores, you take your stuff home with a taxi. There's a taxi queue. There's no such thing as a parking garage. Then, of course, we have road pricing. Now it's going. We've got access limitations, which also already existed at the Roman age, but they are coming big time again. So during daytimes to inner city areas, you're prohibited to drive there unless you've got a special reason, for example, carrying cargo. And then, of course, you'll have smart streetscapes that reflect this. Cities are going to be layered, and even if they are not going to look like that, they are going to be denser than they are today. You will have elevated proximity transportation. And then, of course, we heard it before, the social status of the car is declining. There's an age where modesty becomes the ultimate prestige. We need new scaled shared networks, new mobility tools, such as evolving bike sharing into e-bike sharing. What few people know is that e-bikes have the user profile of a car, not of a bike. So that can help a lot. There's also cargo versions of these things conceivable. This is a vision from Sir Norman Foster for London, using the space above rail tracks that is unused, that's sitting there today unused for express bikeways, many of these bikes being shared. We'll see vans appearing in car sharing for cargo deliveries, things like new types of vehicles, like these stackable cars that push into each other, fold into each other like supermarket trolleys to like supermarket carts in order to save urban space. New robust vehicles specially built for car sharing. And then, of course, we need the adaptation of the built environment. We need curb space. We need space to load and idle. Because the future, and this is almost my last slide, the future, and this is going to be taxi services and car sharing services who are going to be the first to be converted probably to autonomous vehicles like this pod that is linking the parking spaces at Heathrow Airport. So what I think, I mean, as it's been said before, it's very difficult and dangerous. If you look back from the 1950s and all those Jules Verne stories, it's very dangerous to predict the future. But I think it's safe to say that some kind of conversion of modes towards autonomous vehicles in this way will probably happen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Arnd.